This session is called Vision to Action, Globally Networking Geoscience Data Repositories to Advance Complementarity, Interoperability and Sustainability. So I'd like to welcome you all and point out that this meeting will be conducted under the ESIP Code of Conduct. Megan, do you want to say anything else?
Nope, just be aware that ESIP has a code of conduct and there is a reporting mechanism if you feel you've experienced unacceptable behavior. We're just glad to have you all here, and I will confirm that registration came in.
Phew, we now have our full complement of speakers. Welcome, Kirsten. I just want to set the scene for this meeting. The COPDES cluster, Kirsten can give you a better history on COPDES, but it is a place where we try to bring repositories, publishers, editors, and researchers together. And as you can imagine, that's pretty well impossible to find a place where we can meet. We do find when we come to ESIP meetings, we get a lot of researchers and repositories, whereas we tend to hold meetings at AGU and EGU, splinter meetings or town halls, where, as you can imagine from the trade show, we had a lot of publishers who appear interested in what we're doing. And now, last year, we started regular monthly meetings, and publishers are actually turning up to those meetings, as well as a few editors, although not nearly the number that Kirsten Leonard would like, but we do try. At one of our last meetings, so Danny has spun off this working group in RDA for repositories to publishers, trying to smooth the tensions that are obvious between them. And at that meeting, they asked, well, hang on, who do we talk to? Because the repositories are not presenting a uniform voice. Not that we need to have a uniform voice, but let's say the word more coherent voice. And so that got us thinking. And Kirsten in particular raised the fact that we're actually talking about networking repositories in 2008, but we're still not really getting there. So I'll now hand over to our first talk, and that will be followed by quick talks because Kirsten's here from Germany, I'm here from Australia. And then we've got a couple of exemplars of challenges that repositories could share, one from Danny and one from Natalie. We'll then do some group brainstorming around a Miro board, so you can just have a great, brain dump and put down what you think are the key issues. And then we'll have breakouts around key topics with the usual report back and next steps. So Kirsten, I'll hand over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to find a place where I can share my screen, or is that not? Oh, there. Okay, sorry. And sorry for being late. It's been a busy day. And I actually just have a few slides to kind of remember how much we already tried to do.
Kristen, you want me to stop? I'll stop sharing so you can share.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it seems to work anyway.
Okay.
We're seeing your slides, Kirsten. You just put them into slide mode.
Is it there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. This is an old slide and it wasn't even really compatible with the current PowerPoint anymore. I think all distorted. And just shows, I mean, this was the 2008, and I saw Mark's comment there pointing to 2006, which I can beat again, I think. We had one talk as appear in 2005 already on building an international collaboration in geoinformatics. And I think, over these long years since this first came up, the goal has always been that we need to work together to build a much more seamless access to all the resources that we have and make them more used, facilitate this global exchange, but not only of the data, but an exchange of expertise and exchange of experiences, the joint development and convergence on standards. And all this today is as relevant as it was 15, 17, 20 years ago. So it's in some way really, really important that we get back to this topic and maybe do more analytics of what we can do better, what didn't work, and where we can go today with much more insights from these long experiences. So just again, a retro view of what happened. I mean, this 2008 presentation was about something that started around 2005, where a number of very specific efforts came together with a fairly limited focus on drilling operations. Was the Corewall suite, EarthChem and CISA belonged to it. The International Continental Drilling Project Information Network and the PaleoStrat database. And in the end, you know, we had the common goals of building more comprehensive services to the community, leveraging what each other has built, and doing this through a more formal collaboration based on memoranda of understanding, as I just learned. But GeoSciNet never went anywhere. Some of the projects actually disappeared, others had no funding left, and so on. So yeah, was a sad ending. The second example I wanted to give, and that exists today still, is the Council of Data Facilities. This is an old slide, also dating back, I think, to 2015 or 16, from Mohan Ramamurthy from Unidata, presenting about the Council of Data Facilities as a federation of geoscience data facilities. It was obviously more nationally focused on the US, on facilities that were NSF funded, but others joined from other agencies and so on. And there was a really great, I think, push to work together to shape the whole landscape of data facilities in the geosciences. We created, what was created in 2014 actually had a type of a charter that laid out the different ways the CDF wanted to contribute to creating data infrastructure for the geosciences. And in, I think it was 2016, we actually identified this third bullet here in red as one of our goals, and that was to identify and support the development of shared infrastructure services, including computing, storage, and so on, professional staff development, to make this all more concrete. It became an initiative called the Shared Infrastructure Initiative that defined itself even further, ran a workshop, but also in the end the efforts, I think, to create a funded initiative, a funded project, were substantial. We prepared a proposal for a research coordination network that also didn't go anywhere, was declined. So today the Council of Data Facilities still exists and is active as an ESIP cluster, but primarily focusing on connecting the facilities, running webinars, doing exchange of of experiences, of new information, and so on. On the other hand, and I think I heard that Leslie already mentioned this, COPTIS as an international initiative to bring data facilities together with the publishers. And I think that COPTIS has really, over these more than 10 years of existence now, made an impact. And it was ultimately through the Enabling Fair Data project. And I think this is an important lesson that what COPTIS could do as a volunteer effort was limited. It was this forum of people getting together at AGU meetings, at EGU meetings, identifying the common challenges, identifying common solutions. But the actual activities need to be funded. And that was the funding that AGU received at the time. And oh, Shelley will have to tell me the foundation that funded the Enabling Fair Data project, to give them credit. And yeah, that led to something. So now we're still meeting as COPTIS at AGU, and this is what became the driver for this last sort of last breaking session at ESIP. I'm not going to go further into this. We know that there have been many more attempts to network data facilities. Some of them, or actually many of them, are more disciplinary focused, like One Geochemistry, bringing internationally data providers in geochemistry together. The Earth Life Consortium, that is actually quite successful in operating internationally services for the paleosciences now. The Federation of Digital Seismological Networks is quite successful. But many others haven't really moved anywhere. So what is this? I attended in 2015 an NSF Large Facilities workshop, and people at that workshop said, we're not collaborating because we only do that when we're totally desperate. And I don't think that should be a driver. I think collaboration is something that should be a preferred way of making progress and actually augmenting the benefits of operation of data facilities. The challenges have basically stayed the same, and I hope that through the discussions today, we can identify more, and especially, some ideas for solution. Resources have been the major challenge. If resources augment, things like technical diversity or missing incentives can be overcome. Obviously, social and political barriers are still there and need to be very carefully addressed. So these are just some random thoughts that I unfortunately didn't have enough time to put into a more coherent presentation. But I think it will be really important to now listen to the upcoming talks by Kirsten and by Leslie to hear more about networks that have moved forward and that are working. They are not fully international, but more regionally or nationally focused. But I think there are a lot of lessons to learn for us if we want to make progress on collaborations. And I think that really, again, the funding is a critical aspect. And to me, one of the main drivers is that the outcomes of the network directly benefit each one of the participants. Without that, I don't think we can be successful. And that is where, actual implementation of improvements, of standard interfaces of, what we discussed at AGU in COPTIS were these common APIs for repositories to interact with publisher manuscript softwares and so on, that brings real benefits for a data facility. And that is something that if we have agreement on moving forward on that, data facilities can potentially integrate into their work plans and into their budgets and so on. So just randomly throwing out ideas, but I think Kirsten, go ahead. I really apologize. My brain is a bit mushed today.
Okay, so we'll now pass to Kirsten, who's going to give a 5-minute talk on what's going on in Germany, and then I'll follow directly on Australia. We thought we'd raise the issue that this is not something in the US alone. It really is global, and can we work together? So Danny, can you share your screen, please? And Kirsten, you have 5 minutes. So I
You guys
can't
see
hear
it?
you, Kirsten. Yeah, hear you now. Right, go.
Kirsten, we aren't hearing you.
What is that? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so because my loudspeaker is really rumbly, but maybe the mic is better. Okay, so I'm working at GFZ. We recently had a new name in early January. We're now the Helmholtz Center for Geosciences, and we also have a new logo. But nevertheless, I would like, Leslie suggested that I speak about networking repositories in Europe. And I would like to show 2 examples where some kind of networks have been are in place. And I start, next slide, please, with the European Plate Observing System, EPOS. EPOS is now a European Research Infrastructure Consortium, which means it's an independent organization, independent of funding, that is maintained through membership fees by participating countries. Originally, EPOS was funded by the European Commission for 6 years of planning phase and twice 4 years for preparation and implementation of an integrated national research infrastructure for solid earth sciences. Next slide, please. It's highly ambitious because, and the basis for EPOS are these, we call it 10 thematic core services, which represent different disciplines or groups within the solid earth geosciences: seismology, near-fault observatories, volcano observatories, GNSS data, magnetic data, anthropogenic hazards, all these data, including, and the last one you see here is the multi-scale laboratories. That's more the long tail, is the European network of solid earth laboratories, including geochemistry, analog modeling labs, and polymagnetic labs. And all these infrastructures have either been already in place or sometimes newly developed to be part of this big EPOS network. And the next slide shows how the idea and how they were all connected. Here's your slide, Leslie. So to the left, you have the thematic core services. And we mainly worked on this interoperability layer, which meant that we had to harmonize our metadata and to enrich it to be like suitable for this big distributed core service that you see on your right, this light blue thingy. And what it actually meant is that all these groups tried to develop APIs or web feature services to the new data infrastructure and to enable the visualization and findability and sometimes accessibility of data through the central EPOS portal. I must admit, I have not used it so much because you need a login, which I don't have because I was too lazy. But it is up and running now, many years after it was planned. And I think the only reason for having this portal today is that we had very, very good and long funding through the European Commission. And so we started off with this coordinated approach with having this thematic groups, and then in perpendicular to governance and IT and everything. So this portal is up and running, and it brings together some types of data if they're a part of these groups. Another more low level, next slide, please. Yeah, another example for how to not connect repositories, but how to make collaborations between repositories is what we do with GFZ Data Services. GFZ Data Services is a domain repository for geosciences data and scientific software hosted at GFZ. We have a strong focus on long-tail data curation and publication, but we also provide DOI services for international networks, repositories, and services in geodesy, geology, and geophysics. Next slide, please. Which means if you look into that's some of the groups we are collaborating with, and among them are several services of the International Association for Geodesy, like the International Center for Global Earth Models, providing global gravity models. ICGEM, IGETS is the network of supralight gravimeters. The International Service for the GeoEat is collecting GeoEat models. And we have also published the definitive data of the Intermagnet Consortium, representing 180 magnetic observatories worldwide that are connected via this intermagnet. And the latest is that we are also having a collaboration with DIGES GeoRock, which is one of the large geochemical databases next to EarthChem. And with all these, because we provide the DOI services for them, and the next slide, please, to make them feel comfortable, we have a way to brand our landing pages according to the projects. So each of these groups can apply for their own design of the landing pages, which means that people, even if they are not at GFZ, we have many external users, don't have the impression that it's GFZ data, but it's data related to DIGES, to ICGEM, to all these services. And this is somehow, it's a collaboration. And the next slide shows what a bit deeper in this, and that is the example of our collaboration with the International Service for the GeoEat. That is located in Milan, at the Polytechnic Milan, and we have an official collaboration contract. The ISG has, for many years, is having a GeoEat repository where about 200 international GeoEats are archived from many, many countries. It's the official GeoEat repository. And the collaboration means that, next slide, please. The GFZ Data Services is providing the DOIs. We have agreements. We had agreements on which metadata we would use best to best represent the GeoEat models, etc. BP. So we provide the data catalog, the DOI landing pages. Next slide, please. And of course, we make a direct link to the GeoEat repository, and the next slide shows that the repository, the GeoEat repository, also uses our DOIs to link back to the landing pages. And with this collaboration, that is interestingly also used now by official GeoEat models of national countries. We have, I think, at least 5 or 6 DOIs for official GeoEats for specific countries, including Austria and I don't know, Mirko would know. We have already registered 69 DOIs within the last 2 years. So that's really something that is a benefit for the ISG, for the International Service for the GeoEat, and also ensures that the metadata is more or less harmonized, because they have to use our metadata. And the last slide is a bit summary. So what are the benefits of this collaboration between disciplinary repositories and databases and domain repository? And I think the first is that the disciplinary repositories don't necessarily need to develop their own UI service, but they can collaborate with the repository who has already the workflows. And the repository is also ensuring that the metadata are harmonized, because everyone who wants to register their DOIs through our services need to at least provide the same level of metadata, and that they're harmonized. If you look at the data site record, you have all the same metadata. And of course, we support the metadata curation. The repository is providing an additional archive to the for the data from the disciplinary repositories, and with the direct connection back to the original databases, services that are developed, for example, calculation services for gravity models, or the benefit of the GeoRock synthesis database can directly be accessed. So there are two access points for getting the information. And I think this is in contrast to this big APOS project with so many millions of euro being funded over many years with hundreds of people. That is a very low level way to really work a little into metadata harmonization. We'll stop.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'll move on. Could I have my slides, please? Okay, so we're more at the starting end because there's a new funding scheme that I'll talk about, and we're just trying to sort out what our repositories are doing in earth and environmental sciences in Australia, but looking towards what's going on elsewhere. Next slide. Okay. So if you look at what we've got across Australia, we have ENS data in government, federal, academic, federal and state and government. They range from institutional, we've only got a few discipline and co-located HPCD platforms. Infrastructure can be based on on-premise, private, cloud, and generalist repositories are having a worrying uptake in academia. And so this proposal we're moving towards is about what we're calling a data ecosystem based on the definition of Oliveira that provides an environment for creating, managing and sustaining data sharing initiatives such as open data and scientific data communities. Next. So we've pulled together a heap of these actual funded repositories, but they're all funded separately, and they're doing a kind of brilliant job. Some are more fair than others. Some can handle care better than others, but it's actually very hard to integrate across all of these, and including government agencies. And above all, we also have academically funded infrastructures such as the Australian Research Data Commons and a NCI, which is the source for co-located HPC and high-performance data sets in Australia. Next. So, sorry, I should have put funding opportunities for Australian repositories in case you get too excited. But we now have this digital research infrastructure strategy that's looking at everything over 5 outcomes. One of them is AI, ML, another is the big HPC infrastructures, another one's on care, another's on skills, but the third one is on an infrastructure that has consistencies for data collection, curation and access, and actually state that the challenge for those applying is the rapidly increasing rates and volumes of data being generated across all research fields in formats that are not fair and care. And so they've actually announced the amount of money, and I think already I know something like 3 times the bids that are going in so far, and we've only been working on this for a couple of weeks, so it's 3 times what's available. And the proposals must also show compatibility with international research data infrastructures, which is kind of why I'm trying to find out what you guys are doing so I can take it back. Next. And how we're approaching it, you've seen us use this diagram for IGSN, but we're actually doing a survey of all the, like within Ozscope. So it's within the domain facility, because we know that within those domain facilities, they do have multiple repositories. So like Ozscope has 2 long-tail repositories. It has a HPC data repository, and it has what we call the repository of last resort, where researchers can put data that they can't find anywhere else. And we're looking at, what are your volumes? What are your expectations? Are you local? Are you cloud-based? Are you HPC-based? Asking questions like, what's your current storage? What's your expected storage? And then, of course, we want to assess FAIR and CARE. But for FAIR, we're implementing FAIR implementation profiles for repositories, because at a high level, that gives us an understanding of which ones are using 19115 versus, say, DDI or, whatever standards they're using. And so from all this, we're hoping to put together a repository ecosystem proposal with the aim that each facility can still continue doing its own work within its own business, but somehow through networking these communities and repositories, we can move towards an integrated Earth proposal that looks at all domains, marine, solid geology, etc., but also can move at various scales from long tail to HPC. But as I said, we've only been doing the survey so far for 3 weeks, but it's actually turning out that we've got more commonalities than what we expected, and we are hoping we can leverage those. Right, so that's the end of the networking repositories story. We've got a group think on a mirror board, so I think we'll leave questions to that. We'll just go to Danny and Natalie have got 2 examples of where if repository, we can share learning experiences across repositories for both publications and citations. So Danny, can you go, please?
Sure. Thanks, Leslie. So I think that the gist of sharing the newly established working group on this problem of publication repository friction is that this is sort of a use case that serves as a common problem across some of the, at least disciplinary repositories that might be solved in this sort of networking idea. And I want to be really sensitive to the fact that probably most of you on this session have heard me speak about this for quite a while now. So I want to make sure that this is going to be pretty brief, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to catch up if you haven't heard of this yet. So a few years ago, I started talking in the CDF and through ESIP about the challenges that my repository, VicoDemo, a disciplinary repository in oceanography, was having with authors, researchers who are publishing scholarly papers and need to increasingly deposit their data in a repository and come back to the publisher with a DOI for that data. But disciplinary curation takes us a lot longer than, say, just going to a generalist repository, or as Leslie was saying, the repository of last resort, and getting a DOI. The problem with the situation is that data that should be disciplinarily curated are going to generalist repositories that may not be able to create fair data. And so we're maxing out our capacity to try and meet the author's needs to get them the DOI. And meanwhile, authors are just not wanting to wait that long and running to a generalist repository to get their DOI. And I've been talking about this for a few years now. I've been engaging CDF and also some other repositories in sort of the RDA space. And I've heard a lot of things that might be able to be explored as solutions, or at least now solutions, maybe not the best solutions, but really good now solutions. And we just need to explore basically the bigger picture before we can start digging into some of those so that's the problem. And the solution was that I've heard of other folks who were interested in this through peddling this idea and this problem through Coptis. I also got interest in some publishers, and Natalie, Leslie, myself, and Matthew Wark of Taylor and Francis have come together to form a RDA working group on this. It's nicknamed Repo to Pub, and it's specifically addressing this problem or socializing this problem across the publishing and editorial community, but also digging into some of the specific challenges within disciplinary repositories on this. So the working group has been stood up. It started in, it was approved by RDA tab and the broader organization in August, and we sort of hit the ground running on our sort of roadmap here. These QR codes are if you want to learn more about it, or please, if you want to join this effort. And I'll just really quickly give you some high level details about this. We're targeting repository managers as adopters, also the journal publishers and editors, really more the editors who are sort of, or those are the people we want to engage, who are actually sort of boots on the ground there, and secondarily reaching out to researchers and funders. Really quickly, our timeline began in August, and so here are the sort of 3 large buckets of milestones that we want to hit. We first set out looking at documenting a set of repository use cases that demonstrate these bottlenecks, and then also going over to the publisher side and understanding what actually happens on the ground with editors when authors come, and where there are points to both educate and direct authors to disciplinary repositories, or at least a cascade of options, so that they don't just go and dump data that should be disciplinary curated in a generalist repository. That's in the 1 to 6 month timeframe, which is where we are. Then we hope to make sort of this generalized model that we could use for communicating these problems and actually building a shared understanding of these 2 different workflows and the intersections of them. And then lastly, we hope to create a set of recommendations. That was when we started back in August. And we're in this use case development phase right now. And we realized that, hey, the use cases probably aren't the templates for reaching out to repositories and publishers and editors really isn't the way to do this. Once we started looking at how we would ask them to fill it out, we really have pivoted and moved toward maybe this more dialogue, open dialogue. And that was for a number of reasons that we can get into later, or I'm happy to talk to you about that. So we're opting for a survey that may or may not include sort of an interview process. The other thing that happened in that ensuing time is we started connecting with an effort out of the European Union called Tier 2, which is looking to focus in on the challenges surrounding reproducibility through publication, through scholarly publication, and the steps to educating about reproducibility, and then understanding how, or socializing tools and practices to improve reproducibility. And so we sort of fit into a slice of their activities. There are 8 pilot activities, and we're collaborating, and well, we're reaching out to pilot 8 of the Tier 2 project. And then recently, Force 11 announced a new working group that is nearly exactly what we're working on too, and we hope to reach out to those folks. So that's where this effort stands right now. It's definitely a shared pain point across several disciplinary repositories. And it's one that, we think demonstrates this need for better networking. This is the last slide about how to get involved if this interests you. Join the working group. You can go to the QR code. There's a link that's active in the slides. You can share your challenges in this session's breakout group on the Miro board and the breakout groups. And you can also reach out to Natalie, who's online here, and her email is in there to jump on a list for working with us as a stakeholder in interviewing. And I think I've probably gone way over, so I'll stop there.
Okay. Thanks,
I just-
Danny. Nat, go on. Sorry, Kirsten.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to add something. This was really perfect, I think, for getting into all these breakout discussions and so on. That, I wanted to emphasize that this word networking, in this case, really means, the social networking, I think, of the repositories. I didn't want to give the impression that, this is really a deeper integration into shared infrastructure or something like this. This is really trying to act on the same wavelengths and it was really this discussion about the overwhelming move of researchers to Zenodo or other, generalist repositories, that this is driven by the easy way for publishers to communicate with Zenodo as a very powerful point of contact. And we have so many different interfaces and procedures and ways of, publishing data that we're very weak in our position to deliver more streamlined services, and really trying to align the way we do things and technically implement this into, something like a consistent API or, other ways to make it easier for external groups like publishers to interact with repositories is the driver for this discussion.
Agreed. Yeah. Thanks,
guys
Kirsten. There's nothing being built in this working group here. This is purely socialization and really sort of a I don't know, awareness building and hopefully, consensus building as well.
Which is also what we're trying to do in Australia. And we're holding this meeting once a week, and it's the first time we've actually sat down and talked to each other about sharing what we're doing so that we can move forward with a consistent picture to the funders. Okay, Natalie, we're a bit behind time. Can you start with your slides, please?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. So thanks for the invite to speak briefly today. My name is Natalie Rea. I'm a postdoc in the College of Information Sciences at the University of Arizona. And this presentation is going to be the briefest of brief synopsis of work that we've just wrapped up with co-authors Christina Frauenfelder from AGU and Andrea Thomer, who's also at the University of Arizona. And in this work, we're looking at reference manager facilitated data citation. And I'll drop a link in the chat to a longer format presentation of this work that was presented last month at AGU. But in line with the theme of today's session, I'm going to try to focus on the relevance of this work for data repositories and the relevance and importance of this concept of data repository social networks for addressing some of the challenges that we discovered here. So next slide. The motivation for this study was really researcher workflow focused. And so if we situate ourselves within the current data citation landscape, which is something that I don't have to harp on in this group, certainly, there's mandates from various actors that are requiring researchers to share and archive and cite data. And despite corresponding community-led calls to cite data, the uptake of this remains inconsistent, and researcher education on data citation practices is slow. And so if we ask, how can we make this process easier for authors, reference managers are an existing tool that would be interesting to look at for a solution. These are fairly common and ubiquitous, and there's different options for researchers, and they're already well integrated into researcher workflows, and they're convenient. And so in this work, we're really asking, are these tools ready to support data citation? Next slide. The punchline is no. Support for data citation by these tools remains significantly underdeveloped. And what we end up highlighting in the work, which has been submitted to Data Science Journal, is that this is a cross-stakeholder problem. And so repositories do have a role here to play in kind of potentially improving this landscape. Next slide. What we did, again, really briefly, is what we call quantitative content analysis. So we essentially tested the data citation, import, and export functionality of 7 widely used reference managers, which I'm showing on the right side of the screen. We picked 14 Earth and Space Science repositories and then selected a random data set from each to use. And then for each data set, we imported bibliographic metadata using the reference managers. And then we took this data and assessed both the completeness and accuracy of 8 different metadata fields that have been identified by the community as necessary elements of a complete data citation. And I'll give a shout out here to the data citation guidelines for earth science data that come out of ESIP. These were the elements that we ended up using. We used data site metadata for each data set as the source of truth against which we compared that accuracy. We also looked at the accuracy of repository provided recommended citations. So in cases where data repositories provided citation information directly on dataset landing pages, we analyzed the accuracy of that information, as well as the accuracy of any .bib file exports that repositories might be providing on dataset landing pages as well. Next slide. So there's an entire portion of the work that I'm not showing that is focused on the reference manager side of this, how accurate, what are the problems, both on the import and the export side. And I'm showing just this one key figure here related to the repository side. On the y-axis, we're showing the 14 repositories that we selected for the study. On the x-axis, we're showing a sum of those 8 metadata fields necessary for complete data citation. The colors are indicating whether they are each of the metadata fields were correct, which is blue, missing is orange, and incorrect is red. So you don't want to see orange and red on this graph. In all cases, all repository provided citations were missing 2 or more recommended data citation elements, and 5 of the 14 repositories that we looked at contained incorrect elements that didn't match DataCite metadata. And this was particularly the case for repository names and author names. And so if we go to the next slide, which I think should be the final slide, in the paper, we outlined some recommendations, not just for repositories, but again, I'm focusing on that here since that's the kind of what we're talking about today in this session. And I'll also say, just to touch on this concept of a network and social networking for repositories, that the challenges that we uncover here, I think, are really in line with some of the benefits that we could get from figuring out how to build these networks. Specifically, this would provide a forum for distributing information about data citation best practices and the things that repositories are struggling with. And also would provide a unified voice for working with publishers and potentially reference managers in the future to improve some of this. And so I put the QR code there for the more full presentation, and that's also in the chat and in the agenda as well. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Now I've just put we're moving on. Sorry, has anyone got any burning questions they would like to ask the speakers? And I've also put in the chat a mirror board where you can all go and post comments or questions on what you've heard. So the mirror board is set up and you can go in and work on that, or if you'd like to discuss some questions with speakers, can we please, are there any? I can't find any in the chat.
Bob has his hand up. Bob Downs, go ahead, Bob.
Thank you very much. So, lowering my hand here. I'm thinking of both your presentation, Danny, and the presentations about the networking, and your presentation, Danny, is showing a real problem, and that the domain repositories are not well, we're competing and not necessarily winning that battle. And I'm thinking that I'm wondering, I guess, and the question is whether through networking we can provide additional value to the data producers. And my feeling is it's really the data producers who are making the decision as to where they deposit their data. They might be getting hints from the funders, et cetera. I suspect, though, the one of the big drivers, though, is the time element. That is, they didn't plan ahead, working with the repository, or thought that it would take too long anyway. And so they just want to get the quick DOI so that then they can move on and get their publication. And so I'm wondering, what can we do through networking that enables the producer of the data, or the agent who's submitting the data on their behalf, to see the advantage. And you know, we can look and think about it from a face value perspective, and that the objectives of the data producer might be, well, you know, how can we get the most from our effort? And the most might be, what have you, citations, or the most efficient way of moving forward. And if you know, you look at just a reference, that is the end result from the data producer's perspective, is that they're getting a DOI, and that's included in the reference. And then they see the user's going to click the DOI, and whether they're at a domain repository or at one of the generalist repositories, either one's going to have a DOI, and the user's going to click on it, and it's going to get them to a landing page. So at that point, it's really what the data, or the domain repository, can do together if they're networking to show that getting to the data landing page of the domain repository is worth the extra effort of either describing your data better for the domain repository, as they might require that, or even waiting longer for the DOI, as that might be a requirement as well.
I'm just wondering whether or not how to handle this, because we've got half an hour left. Would it be better to go into breakout rooms now? We've got set one up for, like, Natalie's on data citation, Danny's on publisher, and then Kirsten and I would join in on the networking ideas, or do we want to keep in group talk? There's 42 of you in the room. What's going to be the most effective? Squeak now.
Leslie, Bob, this is Shelley. Bob's got a really interesting point. He's trying to create a value statement,
Yeah.
you know, to help. Go ahead, Danny, go ahead.
No. I mean, whether we dig into that now as a large group, I think it would be interesting, but I'm just as happy to, you know, if not everybody is interested in this aspect of it, you know, happy to jump over into a breakout group if that's what the group wants. But I think there is a lot to unpack in what Bob's asking in terms of value for the researcher, but also, you know, well, yes, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, well, that was why I was kind of giving people the option, because we only have half an hour left. Do we want to, say, go into a group to further unpack what Bob's done? Or do we want to do it together? It just means we'll be limited in the topics we can discuss if we stay as one big group. So there's
Yeah.
42 of you in the room. What's your preference?
I mean, I
Well-
see already 2 votes for
For
breakouts.
breakouts. Yeah. Why don't, I think we rely on Megan to set those up?
Yes. Oh, will you
Okay.
remind me that there were 3? I think we should keep one here in this room, so you tell me which one you want that to be, and then I'll name the other 2 rooms.
Why don't
Well,
we
if
do?
you-
Sorry,
ahead.
Danny.
Go ahead. Nope, go
I was
ahead.
going to say, leave the Kirsten group in this room, Danny to do the publisher and Bob's question, and Natalie to dig deeper into the citation issues.
Yeah,
So-
Bob and I'll head over to our own repo pub.
All right. How long, Leslie?
Let's do 20 minutes and then we've got a 10-minute report back. And then if each group, so we've got to come up with 3 key messages from this session. If each group could come back with 1 key message, that would be great. And if you open the slide deck, you can see I've got a space for it, or we can put it in the notes, whichever is more convenient. And also with your groups, if you could use the Miro board for discussion points, or again, use the notes, that would be great.
Okay, the rooms are open. You can choose to join them. If you're having trouble joining them, let me know, or stay here.
So we're staying here, Leslie, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I stay with you, Leslie. You said it, didn't you?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Well,
How do we
I'm just here. Don't ask me to think at this time of the day.
How do we find them? Megan?
At the bottom
How do
of
we
your
jump in?
Zoom app, there should be a breakout rooms button, but I can
Even
also send
it-
you. Where would you like to
Did
go?
you
It's
make
under
me-
more.
Oh, it's under more. Thank you.
Yeah. So there's one labeled unassigned, which means stay here. The other is
Got it.
publishers and Bob's question, and 3 is citation issues.
Like we're getting a good distribution between them.
Which is the aim.
And everybody is supposed to work on the mural, right?
Well, Miro or the session notes, if you want to put ideas down
Okay.
or questions, okay? It's just some people prefer one way and some people prefer the other way, so we gave you 2 options.
We're losing many people.
Well, I mean, it's
It's pretty even, 11, 12, 12 right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
wow, that's amazing.
So
So,
worried about that. You go, Kirsten, it's your group.
oh, well, I mean, we've talked so often about the networking of repositories. To me, you know, there are a lot of pressing issues, and it would be nice to see a little more on the mural board. So far, there's only one issue. But I think, you know, once you actually start to network, there are lots and lots of topics, from, you know, the way you develop standards, the way you govern them, the way you come up with consistent procedures in quality control and citation and so on. I think there is that second question in how maybe we form global networks that has come up again and again, that, you know, what's the level of commitment and what is, you know, the level of governance for any of the networks that that we want to create. And, you know, so I think both questions need to be addressed together. And I see lots of people on this on this Miro board, but not many notes yet. So maybe we just need to have people unmute and show their faces and say something if we don't want to get it, if they don't want to write it down on the Miro board. Let's just make it easy to get started with those who are here. To just tell us, why did you stay in this room? What is the specific interest you have? I see Bolivar, Megan Wong, Ted Haberman, Damian, and Charlie. Any input?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I fairly new to the topic and am always interested in improvement of quality of metadata, citation, and things like that. So that's kind of why I ended up here, and I also stayed here. So this is a lot of new information for me, and also having gone through the DOI conundrum recently. And thankfully, I had a PI that was like, do it first, get your PI on your DOI on the data first, and then journals will love you. But I can see that how can that really hinder the publication versus quality issues. So just here to learn.
Which repository are you with, or are you researcher?
Where did I submit? I just at Sonoro and at NIH. So
Oh, I see.
submitting
Okay.
NIH microbial DNA data, biological data, and then the corresponding code for it. So and yeah, I'm at Iowa now at Iowa State University.
Oh, okay. I saw something from Nevada in the back. I thought I had placed you to Nevada. It's the Lancet.
Okay.
Megan,
And
did you want to share what you put in the chat, or I noticed you unmuted?
Oh, hello. Which chat? Yeah, I've put it in the general chat. Yeah. Oh, can you hear me properly? I think you
Yep.
can. Yep. I'm in this breakout because I guess I'm in the trenches with Leslie, working out how we can network repositories in Australia. And I'm new. I'm learning a lot in this space. So already a lot today. I've got a lot to read up and follow on, and with existing network stuff and learnings. So it's good to hear everyone's common challenges. And in the chat, I was just responding actually. Yeah, I didn't know quite where that fitted in. Recently, I've been depositing data sets and looking at the different options, and we're leaning towards going with Zenodo because of its integration with GitHub, just because it's easy and suits our purpose. If we're dynamically, oh, thank you. Waffles have arrived.
It's breakfast
Yeah.
time over here, troops.
oh yeah, that's
Breakfast.
right.
Yeah. Very nice. So yeah, I'm just looking into it at the moment. Just so if we push a major release, of an ontology or vocabulary, which you can call a data set, then we can get a citation for it. And I think in the chat, I could use the cite all versions from Zenodo. It's just that because we move around people who work on ontologies and what move on and off projects, it didn't suit us that the owner of the data would have probably preferred it to go with their institutional repository. But we can't all log in because the developers, you know, are funded, come on and off projects. So, yeah. We're actually not allowed to use the, we're not allowed to deposit things to the funders repo because we're not employees there. But anyways.
Well, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, I didn't know quite where it fits in with the GitHub integration stuff.
I think Zenodo and GitHub work fine, but what I observed, because we have at GFZ, for example, we have GitLab, which doesn't have this integration. So people come to us to get their DOIs from a domain repository. And whenever the curation on my side is to look whether, for example, the formal rules for software licenses are fulfilled. That there is the copyright statement, the disclaimer, and everything. And normally, and there are some groups who really know how to do this, but most of them just add, either they have no license added, there's always the copyright statement missing, or they're using wrong disclaimers and everything. And this is because the normal software developer doesn't need to care about the formal ways of providing this information. And even there, a domain expertise or domain repository where there are persons who curate the metadata or the data can be extremely helpful for the quality of even of code.
But how would, I mean, just coming back to the theme, do we have, do we know that these issues will be addressed if through networking? Not really, right?
Someone's put on the Miro board, we have 2 global networks of repositories, DataCite and Crossref, that work quite well and have capabilities. Are we using them effectively? I wouldn't have thought DataCite. Is anyone here who put that up?
Oh, Ted, did you put it on the Miro board?
I did.
Oh, Ted, explain.
Well, it's ironic that we started with your talk, Kirsten, talking about how long many of the people in this discussion have been working on this without much success. And it struck me that it's about the same amount of time since DataCite and Crossref started. And now, DataCite has over 3,000 repositories or 3,000 members. Almost all the repositories that this group uses are members of DataCite, or like Kirsten said, they were using DataCite as a sort of a centerpiece, if I understood her talk, of the DOI services that they were providing for a bunch of different earth science projects. Most of the utilization of DataCite is about either 10%, it's really just mandatory fields, which are about 10% of the fields that exist. But the other fields that are in DataCite offer a lot of capabilities that are very useful for earth science, like temporal and potentially spatial searches, plus all the links. So you can always link from DataCite back to something that has more complete sort of reuse or metadata. So if the people in this discussion that are looking for a way to build on common services all said, hey, we're going to try and do the best we can as the first step, using DataCite more effectively, then the networking would be enhanced, because instead of saying we're doing it this way, we're doing it this way, we're doing it this way, which is a typical networking conversation, we would say, well, we're doing it this way in DataCite. Let's build on those capabilities in DataCite. And then, of course, the publishers are integrated. Natalie's talk was really very interesting. The integration of the publishers is through Crossref. Madison is here. She's doing some amazing stuff that I think she's talking about tomorrow in finding links to data sets in papers, which is really one of the most difficult things around. But she's making some amazing progress on that, and has for a number of years in the USGS, sort of integrating Crossref and DataCite. So it just seems to me that if we decided we were going to use DataCite effectively and maybe do an earth science profile of DataCite metadata, something, I'm not sure what the exact plan might be, but then we could actually start moving forward and see what happens.
I mean, I find that really interesting when you say, to some degree, we're obviously using DataCite already pretty effectively, because we're all getting the DOIs. And
well, yeah, but that's only for the use case of getting DOIs. It's not using DataCite effectively, because DataCite actually supports a wide variety of other use cases that very few of the people in earth science have the metadata that exists in DataCite. The fields exist, but they're not filled out. So I would argue that doing only the mandatory fields in DataCite is not using it effectively.
Yeah. Can I answer, or can I make another comment on that?
Yeah.
If I see that the DataCite Commons catalog is not harvesting many fields, I can understand questions or motivations that people do not want to share more. I think part of it is that people are not aware what it means to provide metadata. They just think, I need the minimum metadata to get my DOI. Here we go, full stop. But there are others that really carefully provide the metadata. They use even subtitles or translated titles. But what value does it have if you look at the DataCite catalog where this is not indexed? And this is, I think, an issue where we should speak to DataCite to be more performant, because this would be a motivation for people to use more fields if they're not using it.
Yeah, I mean, I think speaking to DataCite would be, I mean, you and I speak to DataCite at least once a month.
I know, more, and with PSG.
and so I think speaking to DataCite is a part of this model. And if you had an earth science profile in DataCite, then how you use that, like in IGSN, there's a page that I found about enriching DataCite metadata for IGSNs, and a lot of the pieces in that page would be relevant for a lot of our science data sets. So I think, and I think, DataCite Commons is really, it's something that's developing and changing and growing and
every day.
has a lot of capabilities and interesting things, but it has a lot of problems. But yeah, trying to integrate earth science needs into commons would be part of this model. And as you know, Kirsten, trying to get people to use more of the DataCite metadata fields is something I do all the time, and you also. So
yeah, but there are also, well, my experience is that some really are not aware of what it means.
yeah, I agree.
When you look at it, I had one example of a friend of mine who was in Canada, and there was just crap, and I called him, and then we discussed, and they changed it. But then there are other means, and I think it's sometimes it's a funding issue that if and I think it's there that's much more. It's not one dimensional. We have to look at different aspects, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But if you've got X dollars and you distribute them between some number of repositories that are trying to build, like you mentioned, you were using the DataCite model, and then everybody, I mean, there are already tools for getting metadata into DataCite, and Crossref too for publishers. That's another layer that makes things difficult. But there are tools for getting all of this metadata at least into DataCite, and then starting to build on top of it is another motivational feature, like you mentioned. I mean, we're looking for making things work. Helps motivate people to put things in.
So just following on, I noticed that on the Miro board, I've just copied it into the notes. Someone has actually put established common practices for citation tools that are similar between repositories. So in a way, some of that we could do up at the DataCite level. Is that what they're saying? Oh, sorry, that's citation tools, but what you're saying is we establish common metadata profiles through DataCite. And that we can use DataCite.
Using DataCite.
Yeah, because so many of us are already using DataCite. I think we're going to get kicked out in 45 seconds.
Oh, I didn't see
You're
that
not
yet.
going anywhere. You're staying here. Everyone's coming in.
Yeah, we're just staying, right. But I mean, these are really important points, that something beyond just DataCite and Crossref is needed. How do you build the consensus on the minimum common metadata or common bibliographic metadata, common practices for citation tools and so on? And especially if you're talking and extending metadata in sort of around disciplines, you need that communication and agreement, and depending on how far you want to go, some level of governance of those recommended. Okay, we're coming back.
Well, I mean, a lot of us could agree on DataCite as a reasonable discovery citation, and even interoperability and reusability beginning metadata dialect. And it's something that we're all familiar with, and we're all already giving them some money to get DOIs, but we're only using that at a very low efficiency. We could get a lot more for that money.
But then that's a problem I've had raised in other venues where people from the low to middle income countries keep vocalizing that they can't afford DataCite.
Well, if they can't afford DataCite, they sure as hell can't afford to build and maintain their own infrastructure.
Yeah.
So, the question is, what's the most effective thing to take advantage of an existing infrastructure or try and build it and maintain it yourself.
Anyway, we better cut off the conversation because we're running out of time. If we could have a quick run around the room. So from the Kirsten's group, what would be the key messages? Because we've got to get 3 key messages. And I was hoping we could get 1 out of each group. See, we've got, if you go to the notes, oh God, they don't have page numbers in them. If you go to the notes, it's got at the top of 1 page, it's got capture shared insights. So if we could just have group 1 call out theirs, group 2, whoever's ready. I'm looking at the time. We have 7 minutes left before Megan kicks us out.
Well, I can jump in for our group with Bob and Danny, and I'll rely on the other group members to contribute if I've left something out. How does that sound? We talked
Yep,
about
go.
Okay, we talked about providing value proposition for authors and data producers to use disciplinary repositories where it's appropriate, and how the difference between carrots and sticks and why it's easy for them to deposit in a generalist repository, and that they will always tend to do that unless there is a carrot or a stick. And in lieu of these tightly coupled funding repository relationships where the funder provides the stick for the repository and the repository is providing the carrot, when those relationships aren't set up, what can the networks of repositories do to provide mechanisms that sort of approximate that really will help push culture change? And then there was also discussion about disciplinary repositories working with generalist repositories to sort of alleviate the time to disciplinary curation and the author getting the DOI. Did I miss anything? Or please speak up, group members.
No, that's fine. Natalie, I see your group wants an exploratory hackathon. Where would you be doing that?
So we did not get to the details of that. It could be virtual, but we talked first about a number of challenges related to converging on data citation elements across disciplines. And we had some people that were really excited and already looking at their repositories to see what they do with respect to repository recommended citations. And so we talked about a hackathon being something that's more immediate that we could do to give repositories some space to continue this discussion and look at what they are doing with respect to bibliographic metadata for their data sets right now. And that would seed potentially future efforts for better aligning data repositories and reference managers, and that this alignment is something that's important and that we should organize around that.
Okay, thanks. And Kirsten, do you want to report back on group 1, please?
Yeah, I think it's done very quickly because we didn't quite get very deeply into the discussion of networks, but I had this interesting comment about the value that of existing repository networks defined as DataCite and Crossref, and that taking more advantage of the DataCite metadata to provide richer metadata to DataCite would be a way to become more consistent across the discipline.
Anyone from group 1 want to add anything? Okay, so we have 3 minutes left. Just so you're aware, if you, Natalie, can you put the Copdesk link in our chat, please? We are trying to hold meetings once a month. As I said earlier, we are starting to get publishers to come along. So we can, if you want to be able to have a venue to talk to them, this is one that's starting to emerge. And any other messages from the other chairs? Shelley, Danny, Kirsten or Kirsten? Shelley, do you want to say something?
Oh, Leslie, thanks so much. I even though we don't have like final action items coming out of this really fantastic session, I think acknowledging the fact that, you know, the work that Kirsten is talking about with, you know, bringing repositories together for not only, you know, infrastructure, ideas, and sharing, I think that really resonates not only here in the geosciences, but it's resonating in other places as well. So, you know, the work that Natalie is doing with Christina Raffenfelder are some early, easy discussions of what it means to work together. And Danny's really hitting on us on a challenge where we're looking at repositories at the end of the publishing life cycle, you know, research life cycle when the publishing happens, and that's too late. And she's hitting that problem head on. And what does it mean to have the knee-jerk reaction to head to a generalist repository? And we're not making good decisions there because our system isn't set up in a way that's helpful. So I think you should watch for, please participate in Copdesk, please come, and you'll, with your help, we'll build on these ideas and hopefully move the ball forward with a wonderful set of co-chair leadership. So thank you everybody for doing all of this.
Danny, anything to add?
No, if this is interesting to you, the space, please join the working group, the RDA working group. Or if you're a repository and you'd like to tell your story, I think that's hugely valuable in raising awareness of this problem and talking to the publishers.
Natalie?
So please.
I think that was great. Nothing further to add.
I feel like
And
it's
Kirsten.
the ending sales pitch.
Okay, so
Sales pitch.
Kirsten, you have the final say.
Oh dear, you know, I just wanted to reiterate that, you know, yeah, joining Copdesk as a way to converge is a good thing, but stay in touch. And if there are any ideas coming up in your mind after the session now, send messages to all of us or add it to the notes that are there. And otherwise, thank you all for joining, especially those at non-traditional times with late nights in Europe and early mornings in Australia. So, yeah, I think that's it, and have a great rest of the ESIP meeting.